Hi, 6th grade. This is Mrs. Conant, and here is our first math video for 2016. Today we're going to be talking about adding and subtracting unlike fractions. Now, unlike fractions are fractions that are not related to each other in any way. That means that their denominators are, they're not factors of one another like we were talking about yesterday with our related fractions. So when we're adding and subtracting unlike fractions, we still need to have common denominators in order to add or subtract them. So there's a couple different ways that we can find the common denominators. And the first one that we're going to do is a really easy one. And what you do with this method is you just multiply the denominators together. So in this case, we have 1/3 plus 5/8. So we're going to multiply 3 times 8. When we multiply 3 times 8, we get 24. And so 24 becomes our denominator for both fractions. And so now what we need to do is we need to determine what the numerators are going to be. So for our top fraction, we take a look and we ask ourselves, what did we multiply 3 by in order to get 24? Well, we multiplied 3 by 8. So we're going to do the same thing to 1. 1 times 8 is 8. So our top fraction becomes 8 over 24. And then our bottom fraction, what do we multiply 8 by to get 24? We multiplied it by 3. So 5 times 3 is 15. So now we have renamed 1/3 plus 5/8 to 8 over 24 plus 15 over 24. Well, now we can do our addition problem. So we are going to keep our same denominator, which will be 24, and then we're going to add 8 plus 15, which gives us 23. Now remember, we always ask ourselves if we have our fraction in its lowest, written in its lowest terms, have we reduced down as far as we can? And in this case we have. The answer to our problem is 23 over 24. Let's take a look at another one. This time we're going to be subtracting mixed numbers. Now again, we're going to use, we are going to multiply our denominators together. So we multiply 3 times 4, and that gives us 12. And so we are going to begin asking ourselves, what times 4 gave us 12? And it was 4 times 3. So 1 times 3 gives us 3. Then moving down to our bottom fraction, what times 3 gave us 12? 3 times 4. So we do the same thing to the top. 1 times 4 gives us 4. Now don't forget to also bring over your whole numbers. And now we can take a look at completing the subtraction equation. So we have 3/12 and 4/12, and we need to subtract. Well, we cannot subtract 4/12 from 3/12. So this is going to be a review about borrowing. Remember, just like at the beginning of the year when we were practicing just borrowing with simple subtraction equations, we can also borrow when we're subtracting with fractions. And so in this case, we're going to borrow from the 5, and we borrow 1, which turns that 5 into a 4. Now the one that we're borrowing is not going to stay as a whole number. It's going to become a fraction. And we want it to become a fraction that has a common denominator to the fractions that we're working with. So in this case, the one that we borrow is going to become a 12 over 12. So we're going to add that 12 over 12 to the 3/12, and we get 15/12. So now we can do our equation. So 4 and 15/12 minus 1 and 4/12. So let's start with the fractions. 15/12 minus 4/12 gives us 11/12, and then 4 minus 1 gives us 3. Now again, you need to ask yourself, is the answer to this equation written in its lowest terms? Have we reduced as far down as we can? And yes, we have. Okay, so I would like for you to take a minute and go ahead and do this problem as a practice problem. So if you'll pause the video and complete this problem. Good job. Okay, so you should have multiplied 20 times 8, and that should have given you the common denominator of 160. So you multiplied 8 times 20, and that gave you 160. So 5 times 20 gives you 100. And then 20 times 8 gave you 160. So 7 times 8 gives you 56. So when you do that addition equation, you should have 156 over 160. You definitely needed to reduce that. And so after reducing, you should have 39 over 40. We're going to look at another way that you can find common denominators when you are adding or subtracting unlike fractions. So in this, with this problem, we're going to be looking for the least common multiple between the two denominators. Remember, least common multiple is when we have two numbers and we look at the multiples of each number and we find the smallest multiple that they have in common. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to start thinking about the multiples of 8 and the multiples of 20, and we're going to find the smallest one that they have in common, so the least common multiple. So let's take a look at 20. 20 times 1 would be 20, 20 times 2 would be 40, 20 times 3 would be 60. With those multiples that I just said, are any of them, do you think, common to 8? Well, 8 times 1 is 8, 2 is 16, 3 is 24, 4 is 32, 5 is 40. Okay, I think we found our least common multiple between 8 and 20. That would be the number 40. Okay, so here we have our common denominators. So now we again need to figure out what do we multiply these numbers by in order to get that denominator. So for 8, we multiplied 8 by 5 in order to get 40. So 5 times 5 is 25. Now with 20, we multiplied that times 2 in order to get 40. And so 7 times 2 is 14. So now we can add these two fractions together, and we get 39 over 40. And 39 over 40 is written in its lowest terms. Okay, let's try that same method but with mixed numbers. So we now are looking at 8 and 6, and we're needing to find the least common multiple between 8 and 6. So let's think about the multiples of 6 and 8. So for 6, we have 12, we have 18, we have 24. Are any of those also multiples of 8? Well, you should know that 24 is a multiple of both 6 and 8, and it's the least common multiple. And so that is what we're going to use for our denominator. So 6 times 4 gives us 24, so 5 times 4 will be 20. 8 times 3 is 24, and so 5 times 3 will be 15. Don't forget to move over those whole numbers. So now we have 1 and 20 over 24 plus 3 and 15 over 24. Adding the fractions, we get 35 over 24, and then adding the whole numbers, we get 4. 1 plus 3 is 4. Now, this is not a mixed number that's written in its lowest terms because 35 over 24 is an improper fraction. So we need to turn that improper fraction into a mixed number. So we would do that by, remember we reviewed this yesterday, you're going to divide 35 by 24, and you will get 1 and 11 over 24. So 24 goes into 35 once, you have 11 as the remainder, and you put that over 24. Now don't forget, 1 and 11 over 24 is not your answer. you still have that 4 that you have left from your original mixed number. So you have to add that whole number, the whole number of 4, to 1, and you get 5 and 11 over 24. Okay, here are 3 problems that I want you to pause the video, and I would like for you to do these 3 problems as practice problems. You need to find the least common multiples of these denominators in order to find your common denominator. Good job. Okay, so for the first one, you should have determined that 36 was the least common multiple of 12 and 9. So then 12 times, excuse me, 12 times 3 will give you 36. So 7 times 3 gives you 21. 9 times 4 gives you 36. So 4 times 4 gives you 16. We're going to add those together. We get 37 over 36. That is an improper fraction that needs to be turned into a mixed number. And so our mixed number would be 1 and 1 over 36. Next practice problem. You should have determined that the least common multiple of 11 and 2 is 22. 11 times 2 gave us 22, so 9 times 2 gives us 18. 2 times 11 gave us 22, so 1 times 11 gives us 11. We're subtracting, and we get 7 over 22. And that fraction is written in its lowest terms. 2 mixed numbers, 6½ minus 2 and 6/7. Okay, the least common multiple of 2 and 7 you should have determined is 14. 2 times 7 is 14, so 1 times 7 is 7. And 7 times 2 is 14, so 6 times 2 is 12. Move over our whole numbers. We cannot subtract 12/14 from 7/14, so we're going to borrow again. Okay, we borrow, and that 6 becomes a 5. The one that we borrow, remember, it does not stay as a whole number. It becomes a fraction, and it needs to be a fraction that has a common denominator to the fractions that we are working with. So in this case, that 1 is going to become 14 over 14. We add that to 7 over 14, and we get 21 over 14. So now we can subtract. We get 9/14, and 5 minus 2 gives us 3. And that is written in its lowest terms. Okay, so your assignment is to take notes in your journal, and then you also need to complete practice problems 7, 9, and 11 on page 106. I will see you tomorrow. Have a great night.